another example of that is probably all the trackers. There's far more trackers in the primary sector from other companies because let's face it, you don't want to probably use some of the other MIS and probably Sims sort of trackers because it's too complicated to create. Why do you want, and it's a great thing for some of the sport teams because obviously they created it for the primary schools. But actually, if a primary school wants to create their own and adapt their own, it's just really complicated, probably in Sims and that's why there's so many primary trackers out there with O-Track. And I know they're all the ones that Juniper have sort of bought up.
Yeah, they'll all be relabeled now, won't they? It's Juniper something. So yeah, they'll all be one.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Which actually is an interesting thing from a Juniper perspective, because obviously they bought all these trackers, understanding they needed to get a good probably customer reach in the sense of, through the trackers, but also then they bought Pupil Asset, which is now obviously Juniper Horizon. So, that they've almost sort of tied together all the sort of primary pieces. Do you think that was a good move? Do you think they got their strategy right?
Yeah, I do. I think that they've clearly got a great idea about what they wanted to go after. Where they have started to really go after all the assessment packages, certainly focusing on the primary area. They then also have brought up Cicero as well, which are absolutely fantastic purchase for them as well. I mean, I know some of the guys at Cicero. I've known them for a long time, and really, really great suite of products that they've got there. But I think, they've gone in clearly, assessment in any school environment is also clearly very important. But another element to that as well is data analytics. So, data analytics has suddenly become, over the kind of past 2, 3, 4 years, has really become so accessible to schools. It's become accessible to people in schools to kind of play with, and it's also become accessible for schools to just understand. And again, it's no disrespect, schools, not that they didn't understand it before, but the process of doing that on an individual basis for them before was usually on the good graces of people that understood it in schools, and then be able to kind of share that out to their colleagues. Now there's tools out there that can kind of do that. So not only with those assessment and attainment tools that Juniper have brought up, like Cicero and Classroom Monitor, etc., but what is also evident now as well is the analytics that goes into the wider data sets that are available within schools. People plugging these things into Power BI, Tableau, Google's one that I've forgotten the name for now, but they're all playing with all of these sort of things now, and they are genuinely easy to do and play with. I mean, I'm even playing with them, and I'm not a technical person by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that's only going to grow. The analytics of data, not just the recording of assessments, but analysing it and showing the outcomes, and then moving into predictive analytics as well. So actually, can we spot signs early on where we can intervene and kind of put people back on a good trajectory on a very individual basis? That's going to become so important over the next 5 years, and we'll see products that will hit the marketplace that will start to do that. They will focus on assessment, and so what Juniper have done is, and I'm hoping this is the rationale behind it, but they've clearly seen that, and they've gone, do you know what, we need to be so embedded into that assessment space early on, so that actually where any assessment analytics is happening, they're using our products for it. They can combine them together. They can pull all of those good resources. They've clearly got the expertise from the companies and the people that they've brought in, and so they're going to just be such a force to be reckoned with when it comes to assessment and assessment type data.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I know when I spoke to to Winston at Aris as well, then they're definitely thinking along those sort of lines. And I think it's a really interesting place, because this is obviously one of your specialisms. You love data and analytics and so on. But actually, I'm with you. I think the differentiator that somebody is going to come into the market with, so one of the MASs has to go down this road, is where it gets more into that sort of predictive machine learning type of analytics, where it's along the lines of, I always sort of picture it like a little bit like Amazon. So you've asked for this information. Did you realize there are these other 6 children who are moving in the same direction, where they might become NEETs at some point, or wherever it is? But that sort of analysis is key. That's the supporting the teachers to get to the point of individual learning, like you say, where you go, actually, this child needs this sort of type of intervention.
And that's the trick, isn't it? Because I've said for a long time with this. I mean, this goes back to my days at Group Call, when Group Call and Group Call still are looking at kind of analytics and Power BIs and things like that. Is schools typically will only focus on a handful of kind of data silos. The things that they'll typically analyze are assessment, behavior, attendance, a few other bits and pieces occasionally. But those are the three key ones that they're always very, very interested in. And unfortunately, that only makes up such a small part of a child. If you try to put together a digital picture of an individual child, that only makes up a very small part of that. And so what I see is actually the expansion of that to cross-referencing that against other silos of data. Very tentatively areas of kind of safeguarding. So actually on an individual child basis, are there safeguarding issues that may or may not be influencing why they're not attending school? Because again, we come back to this analysis and it's very, very kind of, looking backwards, very retrospective, in terms of, well, a child's not attended school for 2 weeks. Okay, fantastic. They've lost 2 weeks of school. You can make an intervention now, but actually there are reasons why they didn't attend school, and until you address those reasons, then they're not going to come back to school, or their behavior has really dipped. And again, with that, we are now starting to do analysis, and we know the answers to this already. If you don't attend school, you don't do as well when your outcomes in school 95% of the time. And so there is a lot of analysis to say, well, actually, I can see attendance has dropped and behavior has dropped. So I can do some very simple predictions to say, their attainment and their achievements are going to, not be as good in 2, 3, 5 years' time. Okay, fantastic. That's great. Largely, we've all known this for so long. But actually, we need to take a step back even further than that. We need to start looking at what are the kids, what are children and students, what is their life like at home? So many elements of safeguarding, all very appropriate. Lots of people can get very, out of their prams about, when we talk about safeguarding data, but, appropriately looking at how we can, put this into the mix. Nutrition. Now, I spent a long time, probably the last 2 years, looking at nutrition information and how we can appropriately use this for the betterment of children, students, teachers, anybody within school life. So very much looking at certainly allergy management, but in particular nutrition. I would really like to be able to see, as a parent myself, to see, okay, my daughter has had 5 school meals this week, and I know that she's had fish and chips one day and she had lasagna another day, etc., etc. But what does that look like from a nutrition perspective? Can I now compare that to what actually they're having at home for breakfast and for dinner and at weekends? Because actually, are they eating healthily? Not just within school, and actually schools don't, as far as I'm aware, don't really look at this anyway. But then, as a parent and as a whole complete picture, what does that look like? And then from there, how does that impact upon their their attainment, their behavior in schools? There's been studies, and we know this as well, just anecdotally, if kids don't eat at lunchtime, or just coming up for lunchtime when they're hungry, their behavior is going to drop, or their attention span drops off. We all know this because as adults we all do the same as well. Absolutely. But how can we change that? We can't change that unless we kind of have some raw data to kind of look at that, analyze it, and say, well, actually, where is that dip? If I had a graph to say, well, what is the peak time, or the trough time, I should say, of attention span within schools? Okay, and it's kind of 10 to 12. All right, fantastic. Do I move my lunch earlier? Do I add a break time in where there's snacks available? Do I do other things to change that? But we can't see that without the data over a period of time to look at that, even in an aggregated basis, and to start seeing and playing with that. And there's huge silos of data that schools collect that across all manners, safeguarding, what library resources are they looking at, what clubs do they attend, what school trips are they going on, again, what are they eating, what are they drinking in schools, and things like that. And actually, that starts to build a much bigger digital map of a child. And once we've got that, then we can start to have better predictive analytics to say, well, actually, I'm not just focused on attendance, behavior, and achievement, and if I improve their behavior, that's problem solved. No, actually, I might have 3 completely distinct areas that I might need to improve. Can they access library resources at home? No. Okay, well, actually, we can see trends of people that have been in a similar situation. They go on here, and actually, if we provide them with better internet at home, let's just say, okay, well, we've seen with proof of that their trajectory improves. we don't know all this sort of stuff because none of this data is all being kind of put and analyzed together. And I think that you're absolutely right. I think what we will see in the next kind of few years is either an MIS or other systems, other vendors will enter this market or adapt their own products to this market to start to provide much better analytics across lots of different areas, not just the typical things that we've always looked at for years and years.
I fully, I love it. Everything you just said, because ultimately I agree. The demographics even of a child are absolutely paramount. If you want to get to the point where you get the right interventions into school, proven ones, obviously you have to work with schools because obviously they understand what works, what doesn't work. But actually, to get the analysis, you need that baseline. That baseline is not just about assessment, because those aren't the only reasons why children behave in a particular way or why they learn or what style is best for them. There's loads of information which is captured by, like you say, MIS, by cashless catering sort of types of companies. There's lots and lots of different, loads of information, tons of information, and I think we should be using it better.